Hello everybody, I'm Mark Mazzatenta. Thanks for joining me. I'm here to strengthen your guitar skills and Happy New Year 2025. I thought I would just give you a little update and share with you some great exercises today for strengthening not only your physical skills, but your mental skills as well. So we'll get to those in just a minute. You may have noticed I'm not making weekly videos anymore. The watch time, the viewing watch hours on my channel never got high enough over the couple of years that it included any kind of money at all. So I'm just doing this on my own. And after the 300th video, that's a lot of things to talk about. So if you think of a topic, you probably will find it in the videos that I've already made. But it was a lot of work and a lot of time for free. So if you want to make some donations, I use PayPal, and I'll put the link in the description. Some of you made donations, thank you, but not too many. So that might convince me to make more content more frequently. Or if you want to get a lesson, we can just do a half-hour Zoom lesson, and that would be easy. You could, again, I would use PayPal for that. Just email me if you want details on that. I'll put my email in the description as well. So that's a little update for 2025, but today I do have a pretty important lesson to share with you, and it's really going to strengthen your fretboard knowledge and your knowledge specifically of chords, harmony, voicings. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of circling back to my most watched video, which is called 3 Exercises for Better Comping. It's got over 20,000 views at this point. And where I got a lot of those ideas was from what I'm going to share with you today, and that is from a guy named Gene Bertoncini and his book called Approaching the Guitar, which I have here to show you. There it is. And there's the man, Gene Bertoncini, Approaching the Guitar. I met him and hosted him a few years ago when he was in town giving master classes and concerts. Super nice guy, awesome musician, and fantastic guitar player. So the examples you'll hear today are from that book. Now, he uses an 8-bar chord progression. It's actually the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves in E minor. And he will throw at you certain restrictions about what tone to put in the soprano pitch. Now, to prep for this, what I would do is whatever chords you know really well, maybe you know an A minor, go in and ID those notes. A, another A, C, another E. So you realize how much duplication there is in guitar shapes. And then what I would do is rearrange those so that you're thinking about those as root 3rd, 5th. So an A minor chord would equal A, C, E. Now, with the chords you're gonna hear today, they're super colorful jazz voicings, I guess is the best label. No matter what label you want to use for it, they're awesome chords. And these are my favorite because they have so much color in them. So you're going to learn how to create some of these. And not only that, but how to go from one chord to another in a progression with some mental, work to be done. And you'll see what the exercises are. But the first thing to do is just to start thinking of chords in letter names and or scale degrees. Now, the first example, we're going to keep the same pitch in the top voice, in the soprano, as we go through this chord progression. And here's the chord progression. It's the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves in E minor. It goes like this. It starts on an A minor, then D7, then G major, G major 7, C major 7, to F sharp minor 7 with a flat 5, also called half diminished, and then B7, and then E minor. Now he's going to play them differently than that. And that's the whole point of this, is to learn some new voicings. So let's keep the pitch A on top. See if we can keep that through all of those chords. So I think you're already figuring out, in order to do that, you have to know what pitches are in each of these chords, you know, when you're looking at that chord symbol. Some of these exercises, the pitch that we're aiming for might already be in the chord. It might already be the root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. Occasionally it's going to be a non-chord tone, maybe an extension, like a 9th or an 11th or a 13th, or an altered tone, like a sharp 9 or a sharp 5, something like that. So here we go. Let me just talk you through this. So the first chord was A minor. Let's keep that A on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Let's try to keep that pitch on top as we go through these chords. So if you know a bar chord, you might just play an A minor bar chord here at the 5th fret. That gives you that A on top. He plays this. The next chord's a D7. Well, again, with bar chords, you could play your 5th fret bar chord and make that a D7. It's got, automatically, it has an A on top already, so you're good. Now he plays this. It's a little more colorful. Next chord is G major, but we're trying to keep an A on top. Now an A is not the root, 3rd, 5th of a G chord, so this is like an extra tone here. So you have to figure out how to play your G chord, but with an A on top somehow, and have it a G major 7 with an A on top. He plays this. That's the root. The next chord is C major 7, but an A is not a part of a C chord, so we're adding an extra tone here. So you have to go to where you might regularly play like a C major 7 there, or C major 7 there, and figure out how to have an A in there. He plays this. So you're going to be refingering, you're going to be maybe throwing out some notes in order to add and complete this exercise. So for the C major 7, I left out a G, right? If I'm looking at my normal bar chord shape for C major 7, you have C, G, B, E, G. And so he left out the G, which you often can do. You can leave out the 5th if you need to get, if you don't have a finger available for that. So we've kept the root, the major 7th, the 3rd, and then our pinky is available to grab that A on top. The next chord is an F sharp minor 7 with a flat 5. Well, that A is already in that chord. I played it like that the first time. The A is on the 3rd string. Well, his voicing is this. That's nice. And you get that A at the same octave there. Next chord is a B7, and we want an A on top. Well, that note's already in the chord. If you play a 2nd fret B7 bar chord, the A is there, but we want it up an octave. So either you can do that, or maybe that. He plays this. Ooh. He plays like an F triad with a B in the bass. So that's a pretty colorful substitution for that B7. And then our last chord is E minor, but we want that A on top. So you have to figure out a voicing for that. How would you keep the main notes of E minor, root, the 3rd is a G, we want an A on top, we want a 7th as well. See, so you have to kind of shuffle things around. A lot of people go, play that, root, 5th, 7th, A on top. He plays this, which is really, really nice. So his version is this. add some bass notes here and just call out what these chords are. So the first one was A minor, and then D7, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp half diminished, B7, E minor. Now, he's got 8 different examples for each of these little challenges. Okay, so there's a lot of solutions to this. Instead of having an A on top, maybe you can try to have an E on top or a B on top, right? You can almost choose any note and make it a little challenging puzzle to see if you can keep that as your soprano melody. Here's another example. He uses a high D and keeps that through these chords. So a D is not in an A minor chord. So here you go again. You're learning how to add color notes and then figure out how in the world to play an A minor chord up here with a D in it. Right? So it's going to be really great for your fretboard knowledge. He plays this. Okay, so if you're thinking in scale degrees, that's the 3rd on the D string, that's a C. The G is the 7th, then he's got the root, then he's got that E on top. D on top. Sorry, let's do that again. A minor chord, he's got a C, G, B, and then a D. It's almost like kind of like a G triad, but over an A minor chord. The next chord's D7. He's got this. Ooh. Very killer voicing. So notice he didn't just play, which is a D7 with a D on top, but he's got the 3rd on the 5th string, which is an F sharp. He's got a C on the 4th string, which is the 7th. He's got an E sharp on the 3rd string, which is the sharp 9. He's got an A sharp on the 2nd string, which is the sharp 5, and then the root on top. That's why it's so colorful. Next chord was a G major 7. Well, he pretty much uses the stock bar chord major 7th shape here. Next chord is a C major 7, but we're trying to keep that D on top. So if you're playing your C major 7 chord, you don't really have a finger available. You'd have to take something off to get to that D, right? So there's the puzzle. You have to decide. He plays it like this. So he keeps the root, major 7th, 3rd, and then here's that D, which is the 2nd or the 9th. Next chord is an F sharp half diminished. Next chord's a B7. That's not normally in a B7 chord. There's usually a D sharp, but you think about that pitch as the sharp 9. There you go. You have of a B7 chord, you have the root, the 7th, the 3rd, the sharp 5, and then the sharp 9. And then to keep the D on the E minor chord, you might think about this E minor here. Well, the D's not too far away. Maybe you could just keep that. Some people might go. Okay, so there's lots of choices. There's not just one voicing to accomplish the goal of these exercises. That's why it's so great. Okay, so that kept the same pitch on top. Let's move on. The next exercise, he has the same structural degree, meaning the scale degree number in the top of each chord. For instance, you could say, hey, I'm going to keep the 7th as my soprano line. So for every chord symbol, you have to quickly think of what the 7th note is of that chord and put it on top. So with some of these chord types, it'll be the minor seventh note that you're thinking of. With some of the other chord types, it'll be a major seventh. So you could get either one. From the root, it might be a major seventh, it could be a minor seventh. I'll call them out as we go through this. So for an A minor chord, the seventh is a minor seventh distance from the root, which gives you a G. So you have to figure out, how can I add a G to an A minor? You could do that. You could play a bar chord and then maybe bring your pinky up, play a G on the second string. There's another way to do it without having to bar anything. So that's an A minor with the seventh on top. The next chord, D7, he wants you to put the seventh of that chord on top. So here's where you have to learn how to be able to see the image of a chord. Root, third, fifth, seventh. In this case, D, F sharp, A, C. And you want to be able to do that fast because you'll need that skill as you're playing. So he's got, woo! Now that's not a regular D7 with the C on top. A lot of you might just play, right? Maybe a bar chord like that. Or grab it here with a D7 bar chord underneath. He goes, and that's an A flat triad with a D in the bass. A super cool substitution for a D7. So far we've got, next chord is a G major chord. He wants the seventh on top, which is an F sharp. Next chord is C major 7. The seventh is a B. The next chord's that F sharp minor 7, flat 5. The seventh would be an E. And then the seventh of the B7 next. Again, he uses this super cool substitute. It's an F triad with a B in the bass. That's what he's using for B7. And then the last chord is E minor. The seventh is a D. So he's got, what if you put the fifth on top? Again, here's where the mental quickness comes into play. The fifth of an A minor chord is an E. The fifth of a D7 chord, D, F, G, A, right? You want to be able to count up the alphabet quickly to find that note. Then you got to figure out how to physically do it. He's got this. So now we have the fifth of every chord being the soprano pitch. Here's another exercise. Number 3 is playing through a chord progression and have the soprano pitch ascending as you go through that. Now, there's a lot of solutions for this. Right? On that A minor chord, what note are you going to start on? Because you have to give yourself room to ascend through that progression. Well, let's start on the C. There's an A minor 7. The next chord's D7. Well, let's ascend up to a D. Okay. Now, you have some choices. Sometimes you're going to ascend by a half step. Sometimes you can ascend by a whole step. And you have to decide that. Sometimes either one of them will work, but it'll give you, kind of that domino effect. Whichever note you choose kind of dictates how it's going to progress. So he's got. So now we're on a D7. Our next chord is a G major 7, but we want to keep ascending. We're on a D in the soprano. Well, we could stay there, but he wants to ascend. Could we put an E there? Yes. But then we might have a problem with the next chord. So he plays this. That's very, very awesome. It's a G major 7 chord, but he has a sharp 5, a D sharp on top. So we have a C on top, D on top, D sharp on top, going to an E on the C major 7 chord, going to an F sharp on that F sharp half diminished, going to a G on the B7 chord. Now that's an altered tone. A G is not normally in a B7, but we wanted to keep ascending, so that G, it's the sharp 5. It sounds beautiful. We want to keep going up. We're on a G in our soprano. Our next chord is an E minor. So where's the next closest note? We could play an A on the top of that E minor chord. So we get... Here's another one. He starts on an E this time. So that's going to generate a whole new set of chord voicings. Maybe I could start here with my 5th fret, A minor 7. And my starting pitch is that E, so I want to keep it ascending. That's a D7 with a sharp 9. My G major 7, that F sharp on top is perfect. Next chord, C major 7. I can just go a half step higher and play a G as my soprano. And check this out. The next chord is that super colorful F sharp half diminished. He plays it C, F sharp, B, E, G sharp. Why that's so colorful is because especially you have this G sharp, which normally some of the other voicings of an F sharp half diminished don't have that note in there. So a lot of color there. Then we want to keep ascending. Our next chord is B7. Let's use that cool little slash chord, F triad with a B in the bass, and then E minor. You can have a B on top. That's pretty normal. Do any of those. Then you could do the opposite. You could descend. So you'd want to have your soprano pitch starting fairly high so you have room to come down. The first chord he uses is this A minor with an E on top. So that's our starting pitch. Now you could have played A minor like this. Little A minor bar chord, that's fine. But he uses a jazzier voicing. Then for D7, he puts the flat 9 so that you get a half step. Okay. A minor, D7, G major 7, C major 7. Oh, that's that F sharp half diminished. And once again, he also has a G sharp in there and a B. And that's what's giving it color. And then our next chord's B7. We want to keep descending and E minor. So we had A minor, D7, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp half diminished, B7, E minor. Okay, so there's one more. We're going to do that same exercise, but we're going to start on an A. That's pretty normal A minor. But we're going to make it descend now, so we can't stay there on our next chord, which is D7. We're going to move it. And the closest we can move it would be a half step down, and you would get... That's the flat 5. That's why it's so colorful. Then we can go down a whole step, and that would give us our major 7, our G major chord, C major 7 with an E on top. We want to keep descending. Let's put a D on that F sharp half diminished. And then on the B7, if we have a C, which is the flat 9, that would be great. And then that's going to resolve a half step down to our E minor with a B on top. Whew! Okay, you can see that seems complicated at first, but if you do that kind of prep homework of being able to spell any chord symbol and know what the letter names are, and the scale degrees, it'll really help you with this exercise. And like I said, he's got 8 different solutions for each of these 4 exercises. And there are more. You could think of more in slightly different voicings and where to play it. So this is one of the best things to do on the guitar to get better at everything. Okay, especially your knowledge of the fretboard and harmony. So good luck with that, everybody. I hope you heard how juicy some of those chords are. I think my favorite topic is those great juicy chords that have extra pitches in there or altered pitches. And you won't believe what's possible on this fretboard. Go in and just try this and it'll open up some brand new ideas for you.